is I'll start with it's just all meditation. I start with a very simple body of body of light meditation. Then we'll move to a meditation called continuity of consciousness. So I'll do a different one than I did last week. So you get an idea of the mind moment to moment to moment to moment, because the mind is continuous. So it's to try and get everybody to get a sense of the mind moving forward and coming from a certain place. Then I'll see what the time is, and if people want to chat, we may then do clarity of consciousness. But the last meditation, which I hope to have to start at around about um, in an hour's time. So this is an hour and a half. So on the hour, which will be 8 o'clock your time, 8 o'clock Mountain Time, we'll start the 8-point death meditation, and I'm going to combine it. So if anyone has done any of the courses at Copan or read any of Annie Karen's, she wrote this extended Lamrim outlines. Hello, Alice, which is quite I mean, she's laid it out really nicely, and she's had many discussions with Rinpoche about what to put where. So yeah. Anyway, so it's based on that. I'm not making any of this up. Just wanted to let everyone know. Just going by what I've been taught. Okay. Anyway, it's nice to see so many of you here. And so let's just settle now into a nice, comfortable seated posture, just to start with. And, if you're not sitting cross-legged on your chair or your couch or whatever, you can have, and your both feet are down, just make sure your legs aren't kind of crossed. Have your feet about a hip's width apart, your knees about a hip's width apart. And start to feel the sensation of the feet in the floor, the weight of the foot in the floor. And align your shoulders with your hips. Feel the weight of your sits bones on the chair, and your hands in your lap. If you can, align your ears with your shoulders, and imagine your spine as a beautiful string of pearls of light that stretches from the base all the way up through the crown of the head and beyond. So you're putting some space in between your vertebrae. And then go to the crown of the head and just release any tension in your scalp. You might feel a little bit of tingling or not. Then just allow some softness to come into your face. Your eyes, your nose, your cheeks, the area around the mouth, your jaw, back of the head. Release any tension in your neck, and allow your shoulders and your shoulder blades to drop down. Relax the throat and the chest and the belly and all of your limbs. And notice the sensations of the breath as you inhale and exhale. The nostrils. And just for a moment, focus on the breath around the thoracic region. So as you breathe in, imagine the ribs at the side of the body are expanding. So just focus on the breath there. As you inhale, the diaphragm's dropping. You can just focus on those side ribs expanding. And then now focus on the back, the back of the back of the body around the thoracic region. Just imagine the ribs are expanding at that place. And then the front, imagine the chest. You can also maybe notice the sensation at the belly as you inhale and exhale. So there's 3 places, if you wish, you can focus on. I personally, because I was trained that way to focus on a spot at the base of the nose, but some different people have different preferences. It's also good to be aware of any sensory external information that could pose a distraction in your environment. It could be sound, could be touch. You might like the feel of the blanket on your couch, or your cat might walk past and you like the soft fur, and then you start touching it, and then all of a sudden you're not in your meditation anymore. Sound is a big one, though. A mind just wants to go off and investigate, particularly if you're in an apartment block or in a house where there's other people, children, pets, or if you're on a busy street. You might smell something. Maybe someone's making dinner where you are. And then just check in with yourself. See how you're going. How's your mind tonight? Just put some space in between your thoughts, allowing them to arise, abide, and then just trying not to follow the story that might be turning into a mini movie in your mind. So the trick with the mind is to check in and just see what's there. That's super helpful. But then not to get all tied up in the emotion and the feelings. And then before you know what, you're careening off to some story in the future that may or may not happen. So I guess we all have to decide how helpful that is, if that's helpful or not. And just be very, very curious about what's in your mind. It's super, super interesting what's in there. And then also be objective and be kind. Don't be too rough on yourself. And because it's likely that we all have experienced death in our lives. And we're doing these meditations so we can increase our own awareness, so that if we're ever in a situation where we're with another person who's either dying or has been given some news that they will be dying, or you're with, that you just have and for your own self, when you come to the time of your own death, you have a little bit more understanding about what's actually going on in the body, what's actually where the mind is going to be going. So we can think about all the people of our life, our loved ones, our strangers, and those we don't like terribly much. And just imagine they're all, they can change places for relationships. They're interchangeable. And you may have had that experience in your life where a very dear friend is no longer that. In fact, becomes someone you don't like. Or someone is a complete stranger and all of a sudden they're the most important person in your life. And regardless of whatever the relationship is at the particular time, they're all equal, these people. They're just like you and me. They all want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. And they all have this extraordinary capacity for a Buddha mind. So we'll do these meditations, thinking about the mind, thinking about death and the dissolution process for the benefit of all these people of our life, and by extension, all the sentient beings. So just for a moment or two, maybe a minute, just focus on the breath. Notice the sensations of the air as you inhale and exhale. So just imagine above the crown of your head is a sphere of white light. It's a little bit smaller than the size of your head. And this light imagine it, this sphere of white light contains all the enlightened energy in all the universes. Wisdom, kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, enormous intelligence, phenomenal. you might not be able to sort of necessarily see it in your mind's eye. It's just enough to know it's there. Imagine this ball of compassionate, light, white, radiant energy above the crown of the head. Now imagine this light begins, this little sphere of light begins to shrink in size until it becomes about the size of an inch in diameter. It's still just as bright, and it sort of dissolves into you through the crown of your head. It sort of melts, and imagine it's just coming down your central channel and passes your third eye chakra, passes your throat chakra, and comes and settles at your heart chakra, just behind your sternum, that kind of area. Now imagine it starts to expand once again, this light, this enlightened energy, this brilliant, white, enlightened energy. And as it expands and starts to fill your body, all the solid parts of your body begin to dissolve and become light, radiant light. So you can imagine your brain, your eyes, your heart and lungs, liver, spleen, gallbladder, your stomach, your kidneys, reproductive organs, your elimination organs, all becoming light. And then your bones, even the tiniest bones, become light, and the ligaments, the muscles, tendons, the fascia, all become light. And the fluids in the body, the blood and lymph, saliva, urine, the cerebrospinal fluids, and then your skin and hair and nails, eyebrows, your eyelashes, the little hairs inside your nose, all of this becomes light. So just for, a couple of minutes, we'll meditate on the body as a body of light. And should a distracting thought, feeling, sensation arise in the mind, just allow that just to dissolve into light. Now we'll move into our next meditation, thinking about the continuity of our mind. We looked initially at the beginning, we looked at our present state of mind. So check in with yourself again and see if anything has changed. Just feel. And now look at the present state of mind, at the thoughts and sensations that are flashing by. Feelings, concepts, opinions. So just observe them really in a sort of a detached way without grasping onto anything in particular, grabbing onto anything, or sort of pushing anything away. So just check that. And now we'll just very gradually start to go back in time. So briefly skim over the conscious experiences you've had since you woke up this morning. You know, maybe you remember a dream that you had. And what was the first thing you did when you woke up? And then maybe you had something to drink or eat, or you did some practice. So what were you doing this morning? And are these part of the same stream of consciousness as your present experience? Were the dreams you had last night, if you can recall them, do they belong to this same mind stream that you're experiencing right now? So continue to trace your mental experiences to yesterday. What were you doing yesterday? Then 2 days ago? 2 days ago was Monday, beginning of our work week in most countries. And then go back to last week and just check in to see what you were up to last week, what you were thinking or feeling. Maybe last month, March. Do you remember about March, the temperature? And then last year, 2024. And then what about 2023? 5 years ago. My goodness, we were all in COVID then. All in lockdown. This time 5 years ago. And 10 years ago. And just continue to check if these experiences are of the same stream of consciousness. And of course, we're going to develop and grow and change. But there's still this stream of consciousness that is us, is you. And just check in to see whether there is a continuity there. So the idea of this meditation is to try not to get involved with anything that you're remembering. And the purpose of the meditation is not therapy or to go over good experiences or sort out problems. It's just to kind of get a sense and a feeling of your mind's continuity. And maybe something comes up that you'd like to investigate further. So just you can put that aside until later. So go back in your life as far as you can, bringing to mind experiences maybe from, for some of you, it might be further away than others, your 20s. And then maybe go back to your adolescence. And then your childhood. And some people are able to remember maybe the first time they learned to walk, or I always remember as a child looking up at the kitchen clock. It was a analog clock, and just looking at it thinking, I'm never gonna be able to figure out how to tell the time. I was quite concerned. I must have been very little. But is that little child in your own little child, is that the same? Is that the same conscious stream of consciousness? Do you remember your birth? Some people do, but if you don't remember it, just imagine your birth. And just sort of relax and allow memories to arise. And if you're having difficulty accessing any memories from the early part of your life, don't worry. So just become aware that just as your present mind stream is the continuation of experiences that you can remember, like waking up this morning, those experiences are in turn the continuation of earlier ones that you can no longer remember, like what you were doing last month, maybe. It's not as if we wake up every day with a new mind. We'd be crazy. So now think of your birth, and maybe because everyone has been in a womb, you've been in your mother's womb. So imagine being in the womb, and then the moment of your conception. So here, think like this. If your mind is a stream of experiences, each one arising from the one before, then did it exist throughout these experiences, or did it begin to exist at some point? So think about the different possibilities. Like, did your mind arise from your parents' minds? I mean, we have their DNA. That's not the same thing. That's a physical thing. Uh, and if maybe if your mind though did arise from your parents' minds, if so, when did that happen, and how did that happen? It's very curious, to notice in some families you have one child who's completely takes on the aspect of one kind of personality, and then the next child that comes along is completely different. One child could be kind of calm and happy and studious. The other one could be like wild. And you even find this in twins and identical triplets. It's just a different person. Or did your mind perhaps arise out of just nowhere without any causes and conditions? Perhaps it arose from a mind stream that already existed before you were conceived. Maybe in another life. See if you can open your mind to that possibility. Maybe you can have a glimpse of a memory from another life. And having reached back into your memory as far as you can, just very gently bring your awareness back into the present again and just observe the thoughts and the feelings that arise. Just simply experience your own stream of consciousness as it continues to flow. Just feel the rhythm, the momentum of your own stream of consciousness. It's almost like your own heartbeat. One thought or feeling leading to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next, on and on. So now try and get some idea of where your mind goes from here. So contemplate your mind stream flowing through the rest of this evening. After through the rest of this meditation, then after the meditation, then maybe for those of you who are coming to Vajrasattva, and then after Vajrasattva, getting ready for bed, maybe preparing for tomorrow, and then take yourself to tomorrow. Picture yourself in all your various activities and work. And then Friday, then the weekend, and then bring yourself out, to the end of April. Through the rest of this year into 2026. Maybe 2027, 28, 29, 30. Wow. And maybe just take yourself to the time of your death. And what happens then? So there's different possibilities. So consider them. Does this stream of consciousness just suddenly stop, cease to exist? Does it transform into some other form? Does it continue on encountering new experiences? So consider these possibilities carefully. And you may not come to any particular conclusion, but it's just important to look with a clear and open mind at the possibilities. So now you can relax. Maybe have some water if you wish, or you can stay in meditation. But I wanted to just check in with everyone and find out how you're doing. If you have anything at this point you'd like to share or any questions before we move into our other death meditation, dissolution. Do you understand the logic of where we're going? Is it making sense? Okay, good. Was I'm just leading a bunch of different meditations. Everyone's like, what are we doing? Okay. Any questions, anyone?
I actually have a question.
Yes, Zia.
The light meditation that we started with,
Mm.
I've done that one many times before, but it never occurred to me until tonight to wonder if when I imagine the light spreading out and dissolving my physical form, do I keep some kind of awareness of the limits of my form, or is it just supposed to be a big orb, or does it
I
matter?
think because what you're saying is the light could just start to bleed out
Yeah, and if you're imagining your body as light, then it doesn't really have any lineaments,
form.
right? Any
Yeah,
any,
and
any
you
shape.
can you can make it limitless if you like, if it doesn't
Okay.
become too distracting. Yeah, yeah, just and is that what happened?
Well, you know, yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's very hard to like completely lose awareness of the outlines of your body, but at some point, it just that question came to me, like,
That's a
because
fan
I can feel the light kind of, extending beyond my body.
that's fantastic. I think it's great. I think that's totally fine. It doesn't there's no instruction in that meditation as to whether you should do that or not. It comes from the Discovering Buddhism number one, the first one, Mind in Its Potential. So you've probably done it.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was no talk about that as to, yeah, whether you should confine it. I suspect because it's a kind of a fairly beginner meditation, but I love it for this particular context because this is what we'll be doing at the time of death. The body will be dissolving, like we will be dissolving.
Hmm.
Our mind will be dissolving. That's why they call it the dissolution process. So I
Hmm.
guess it would be a little perhaps distracting for people to suggest that they can just spread that light out. But uh, no one's ever asked that before. So, and it's a really great question. And I think it's a super idea, yeah, to go beyond the bounds of your own physical body because I think our energetic body anyway is considerably larger than our physical body.
Right, right.
So it's likely that that's what you were getting in touch with. And
Oh, interesting.
by the time you're kind of, have you ever done any practice like Tai Chi or
Qigong and
Qigong, um, uh, Reiki? All of
mhm.
these things are dealing with energy.
Right.
And it's just something you can't see. And some people experience it more acutely than others. But when you do like the Tai Chi or Qigong movements, you definitely can feel something after a while. Like um
Yeah.
when you go like this,
Uh-huh.
there's nothing there in between my hands, but I definitely can feel something.
Yeah.
It's like wow, wow, wow. There's something going on in between, and you can feel when someone's massaging you or you're receiving Reiki, you can feel the energy
Hmm.
coming through. So yeah, you're sort of heading off into a different realm there, but it's definitely your energetic body is wider than your physical body. So why wouldn't that light then start? You can
Yeah.
feel a person coming
Yes.
sometimes, do you know?
Definitely.
So anyway,
Okay. Thank you so much.
fantastic question. Thank you. Anyone else before we start? No? Okay, let's do it. So I hope it's not too intense, but I'm going to do it. the way Annie Karen suggested, because actually Kimberly's not here and she might listen to the recording later though. All right, so just settle back into your meditation posture. And I'm just going to have another drink of water, but you can wriggle around if you need to. Just get yourself comfortable because it'll be another probably 30 or so minutes. I have two sources for this meditation. One is the Lamrim Outlines that was cobbled together by Annie Karen and is used in all of the courses at Kopan. And then from Dr. Philip Goldstein, who did quite a bit of, I mean, he's a professor, a neurological scientist, and he works at the University of, where is he, in California, Southern California, I think UC Davis. And he spent quite a bit of time in the East and in also learning from different scholars, and spent time in the Namgyal Monastery, which is one of His Holiness's monasteries. So, they talk about elements. So the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air, they cease functioning from the grosser to the more subtle at the same time as the five aggregates absorb. And in connection with this, certain outer and inner signs manifest. And this is explained as the 8 signs of dissolution. So when you meditate on the death process, in order to make the experience real for you, like a rehearsal of your own death, and His Holiness does do this meditation every morning. And you don't have to do it in half an hour. You could do this in 5 minutes. Because if you were to die in a car crash, for example, you would die very quickly. But the dissolution process, I understand, is still exactly the same, whether it happens over a period of 8 hours or half a second. So you can imagine, so this is what Annie Karen is suggesting, to imagine a scenario in which you have suddenly come face to face with death. Most people say they know, unless they're completely taken by surprise. So you might be in your hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses, and maybe there's a friend there, a family member, just kind of watching your face, holding your hand. And you're on your back in your bed, staring up on to the ceiling, kind of wondering what's going on, maybe. Maybe you know what's going on. So the first element to dissolve is the earth element. So what is the earth element? What are the physical components of your body? They're the bones, the organs, the connective tissue, the cells. So just as we did in the body of light, imagine everything's dissolving. All the cells begin to shrink and slow down. So the earth element is losing its power. The body becomes thin. The limbs kind of lose their strength. And they say you get this sensation of the body is just sinking into the earth. So your cells are normally in continuous motion, moving all the time. And as the earth element dissolves, they just slow down. coming to stillness. The luster of your body diminishes. And you have no strength, as I said. And this is kind of what happens when your aggregate of form absorbs, starts to dissolve. When the basic mirror-like wisdom dissolves, the sight becomes unclear. Everything becomes a little dark. And your eye sense, you can't really open or close your eyes. It becomes difficult to. Everything's really heavy. And you have this internal sign of the appearance of mirages. Mirages. I don't know how you say here. So imagine that. So the next element that dissolves is the water element. So what is the water element? What is water in the body? It's all the fluids in the body. Our blood, our lymph, cerebrospinal fluid, the saliva, urine. All of this is continuously moving. And imagine all of that water, that fluid movement now starts to slow down and become still, dry up. And then with the water element is associated the aggregate of feelings, and the body consciousness can no longer experience the types of feelings that accompany sense consciousnesses. And the basic wisdom of equality, our ordinary consciousness that's mindful of pleasure, pain, and neutral feelings dissolve. One is no longer mindful of the feelings that accompany the mental consciousness. So the ear sense is associated with the water element, and one can no longer hear external or internal sounds. So you're going in, everything's going inwards. And there's the internal sign is the appearance of smoke. Some texts talk about it being more like fog. But you've gone, earth dissolving into water, it's kind of like a mirage. And the smoke is like the water dissolving into fire, putting the fire out. The water puts the fire out, and then you have the fire element is starting to dissolve here. So what's the fire? It's the fire in the body. This is the warmth of the body. digestion. You can't digest food or drink. For me, that just logically, I kind of feel that you probably already stopped doing that as the earth element starts to dissolve. I think probably you wouldn't be interested in eating or drinking before that, or at that point. But anyway, that's just what they're saying in the text. You can't digest food or drink. So maybe even if there is food in your stomach, you're not able to digest it. It's nothing's really working. So the heart and the blood are continuously moving, and the blood is constantly generating warmth and distributing it throughout the body. And now the warmth is beginning to dissipate, and you're becoming cold and still. And when the aggregate of discrimination absorbs, one is no longer mindful of the affairs of your loved ones. What time do you have to pick your kids up from school? You're not aware of that anymore. When's your father's birthday? What was it you wanted to say to so and so? Do I need to transfer some money to my daughter's account? That's all gone. And when the basic wisdom of analysis dissolves, which is associated with the fire element dissolving, one can no longer remember the names of people who are close to you. They're gone. And the sense associated with the fire element is the nose sense. So your inhalation at this point becomes quite weak. The exhalation is maybe a little bit longer, maybe kind of more stronger or forced, and you can't smell anything. You've lost your olfactory sense. And the internal sign is the appearance of fireflies or sparks within smoke. So that is a sign that the fire element is now dissolving and the wind element is now dissolved and the wind element is dissolving. So it's also, what is the wind? It's the air. Air is respiration and breath. A breath has been getting shallow, has been getting weaker, and now it stops. There's no more movement of air through the nose or the lungs, and oxygen will no longer be delivered to every cell in the body. And imagine the breath slowing down into stillness. And here they talk about the 10 winds, or you can just think about the winds move to the heart. It just moves the air in the body, the winds in the body moves to the heart, and this is where your breath ceases. So this is the point where you're going to be declared dead. This is at this point of the fourth stage. The doctor or they'll call the doctor to come and check you, and they'll just say, okay, this person's breath has stopped. They're finished. So when the aggregate of compositional factors absorbs, one cannot perform physical actions. I think that likely was happening in the earlier stages. And one cannot, you can't, you don't kind of feel sensations. You can't determine whether something's soft or whether it's smooth. And when the basic wisdom of achieving activities dissolves, one is no longer mindful of external worldly activities or purposes. Like you lose, that person that you were, the job that you did. You're no longer aware of that. And your tongue becomes thick and short. And the internal sign is the appearance of a sputtering candle light about to go out. So at this point, you're declared dead, but there's 3 more stages to go through. So consciousness. This is the subtle mind, these conceptions that we have, opinions. And this is a subtle mind that exists below the conscious level and dissolves. So there's no more subtle thoughts or concepts. And the gross and subtle levels of consciousness have now dissolved into stillness. And the winds in the right and left channels above the heart enter the central channel at the top of the head. And the internal sign is a clear vacuity filled with white light. And so in different texts, they might talk about this is not the same white light as the clear light of consciousness. It's almost like light shining on, like maybe moonlight shining on snow, freshly fallen snow, or sunlight on freshly fallen snow. Is this kind of bright light, white. And then the mind of white appearance dissolves. And here the winds in the right and left channels below the heart enter the central channel at the base of the spine. And the internal sign is a very clear vacuity filled with red light. This is not postbox red or blood red. It's kind of that beautiful crimson, brilliant, radiant, iridescent red that you might see at sunset or sunrise. And this is the 6th stage. In the seventh stage, they call the mind of red increase. This dissolves. And the cause of this is the upper and lower winds gather at the heart. So we've just done the upper and lower winds. And now they gather at the heart, and these winds enter the drop at the heart. And the internal sign, at first you get this kind of darkness, this kind of black. It's vacuity filled with thick darkness. And then you start to get a sense that you're swooning into unconsciousness. And then the mind of black near attainment dissolves. And the cause of this is all the winds dissolve into the very subtle, life-bearing wind in the indestructible drop at the heart. And here is this very clear vacuity, the mind of clear light of death. And here is the point where those people who can control this death process, this dissolution process, can stay and meditate. So this is why it's really good if you have the mind to do this, to practice all the way through, and then you meditate on this clear light. And then you come to the end of your meditation, the clear light of death ceases, and the consciousness, your consciousness, passes back through the stages of dissolution in reverse order. So, if the highly realized being, they do this out of compassion and care for others. And you just imagine that you're doing this out of compassion and care for others. You regenerate the energy of all the elements in reverse order. Consciousness, air, fire, water, earth. And then they say initially the person is reborn into an intermediate state, the bardo, between lives, where the very subtle body can go anywhere, through mountains, fly over Mount Everest, to find a place of rebirth. Or sometimes the person revives back into the old body, and that becomes a so-called near-death experience. So they say that duration of time in the intermediate state can last from a moment to 7 days. Depending on whether or not a suitable birthplace is found. If one is not found, the being undergoes a small death, experiencing the 8 signs of death as laid out above, kind of briefly. And then they can experience the 8 signs of the reverse process and get reborn in a second intermediate state. And this can keep happening up to 49 days. And at this point, a place of rebirth is necessarily found. So, if you do this meditation regularly, and you can find it there are a number of texts that have it. Some of you may have gone through it. Might be a little bit different with some of your own teachers, or I know Coral's done this one. But some of you also, if you've done the Discovering Buddhism program, you may have experienced something similar to this. So you do one that kind of speaks to you, one that you can relate to, or that you feel happy to do. And so if you do something like this regularly, you'll start to develop an appreciation of impermanence, but also an appreciation of your own kind of continuity. And you'll begin to appreciate the transient nature of your life. We see it all the time. Our cells die, are regenerated. Our blood regenerates itself. Our hair goes grey. Neurons are firing and they stop firing. Your thoughts arise. They dissolve. So once we start to appreciate impermanence, this kind of means that anything that we use to identify ourselves changes momentarily. Earth, water, fire, air, consciousness, and physical, non-physical are just momentary fluctuations. And the self that we project onto that is a choice. And if that is a choice, then there's more freedom. That is freedom. I think the freedom is in recognizing that we have a choice and that we have the power to change our mind. So let's just meditate for a little bit, and then I'll just check in with everybody before we finish. think everybody just relax. And maybe as you're relaxing, just feel the sensation, the weight of the feet in the floor, hands in your lap, the weight of your sits bones on your seat. And maybe just wriggle fingers and toes, and open your eyes very slowly. And maybe just initially just look along the length of your nose in kind of an unfocused gaze as you bring your mind back. And then, be aware right now you're going to be in a different state than maybe the people around you. So just be careful with yourself between now and till you've kind of grounded. So I would suggest now you drink some water, maybe have something to eat. And there was a bit of vernacular in there, a bit of traditional vernacular in there. So don't worry about that. The gist of this meditation is to get a sense of the dissolution process, the reversal back, and then into another form, and this idea of impermanence. So does anyone have any questions? Would you like to do it again? If you want to do it again, we ask Venerable Dundrup to put it on again. And I'm so sorry for the people that didn't only got one. So I'll just tell him that, okay. Does anyone have anything they would like to share? We'll say yes. Melanie.
Question.
Hi.
First of all, I would be happy to do this again. So if
Oh,
it's
good.
I find it really just very powerful. When we talk about, or I guess I've heard people talk about that, our karma that ripens at the moment of death, which determines what our rebirth is going to be, into which realm. Is there a place in this process where that happens specifically, or
I think it's in the bardo.
in
But
that intermediate space?
yeah, actually, there's this extraordinary documentary that was created many years ago called Leonard Cohen was the commentator. Was it Death? But Shayla, could you pull that? I think you pulled it up for us last week. Shayla's going to put it in the chat. It's really old. It was recorded in the 90s. It does explain all of that really beautifully. I think it was done by some Nyingma lamas. But what I understand is from all the teachings that I've understood, is very important when the person is starting to go through the death process from the very beginning, to keep the person quiet and calm and positive, so that the positive virtuous seeds will ripen, rather than the negative seeds. Not to touch their feet. Maybe to have some lamas around if you can, reciting. There's all these kind of prayers that you can recite to help the person through this process, because I've understood also can be kind of loud and windy in the in the bardo, so it can be a bit frightening. If you don't know what's happening, it could be a little bit disconcerting. But there are some people who've gone through this death process, they're not necessarily Buddhists, but different from different religions, and they've come back and said, "Oh, it was really beautiful. I'm not scared of death anymore." So it depends on the experience of, it depends what is ripening at the time of death. So this is why I think the Vajrasattva meditation is so potent, because you can start to pull out those negative seeds so they don't start ripening when you're not really strong enough mentally, physically, to be able to deal with them. And it's just sort of like we're trying to, with the Vajrasattva meditation, we're trying to get on top of all of that. There's we've probably got millions of different seeds ripen that could possibly ripen at any particular time. It's like, why did that car crash happen then? That kind of thing. So, does that make sense? So I don't know at what particular point the karma is determined, but I think there might be some clarity. And I suspect everybody has a different opinion about it as well. But I do know that it's so important to keep the person in a particular state of mind. It's for them not to be agitated, the room to be quiet, and from the get-go, because that then helps the virtuous seeds to ripen.
Okay, thank you.
Because I think if you die in an agitated state, it's more likely that negative seeds are going to ripen. So I did hear a story. There was an attendant of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's called Venerable Kunsang. I don't know if any of you knew of him or heard of him, but he was a photographer and videographer, and he did all the recordings, and he traveled with Rinpoche. And eventually we found out that he had pancreatic cancer. He was always having trouble with his stomach. And then finally we realized it was pancreatic cancer. And he was the most generous person, the most extraordinarily kind person, benevolent. He was just a beautiful, beautiful monk. And he was French. Not that makes any difference, but anyway, he was a French monk, but a very, very beautiful heart. And then when he passed, and he had his family there, and another friend was there, and he passed away in France. And then, we all want to know where did Kunsang go? And then we had to do all these prayers, because apparently Kunsang ended up initially this is what I understood from Rinpoche, in a Naga kind of realm, which is not particularly great place to be. And I was just like, oh my goodness, if Kunsang ended up there, where am I going? But then it turns out Rinpoche said that Kunsang ended up in a very wealthy family in Asia somewhere, so he's doing okay. But I think, when you've got people like Lama, and then of course there's things you can do at the time of death, such as power. And, if you have, of course, if you have a Lama around who's as powerful as Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and they can do power, then, that helps transfer the body a little bit faster. So, but I think there's so many. If you go onto the FPMT website, there's like a ton of prayers what to do at the time of death. There's this liberation cloth that I have here that you're supposed to lie on the body, and all these. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has given so much advice about how to help people die at the time of death. So even if some of those negative karmic seeds do start to ripen, you can kind of counteract them with all these different things, the prayers and the mantras, the liberation cloth, the stupa on the crown of the head, making sure the person's comfortable. So, yeah, they might ripen, but there's things we can do. And so Rinpoche would have us do it anyway, whether they were going to have a virtuous rebirth or not. And it was really interesting. Venerable Ingrid passed recently. I don't know how many people know her. She's been in this area for years. And there's been no lamas around here for a long time. Like Ling Rinpoche came, like last year, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche is not around anymore. Our precious Geshe Dakpa is now 92, doesn't travel. And we used to have so many lamas coming backwards and forwards through the Bay Area. And it just so happened, she ended up in the Land of Medicine Buddha Hospice, Tara Hospice, on that property. And it just so happened to be that this one particular weekend that Venerable Ingrid ended up there, Yangtze Rinpoche was teaching at Vajrapani Institute. And so, of course, he was available to come down and do all those prayers. And I was just like, oh, good on you, Ingrid. She's sort of...
No mistake there.
No, I don't think so. So anyway, you never know. And that's her virtuous karma ripening to get the help she needed at the time. And Yangtze Rinpoche was there and happy to come. So anyway. So everyone, I'd like to dedicate now. I'm so sorry we're out of time, and I have to have a little bit to eat before, in another 28 minutes we start again. So you're very welcome to come to Vajrasattva in 28 minutes. And thank you so much for coming. Let's just dedicate any insights, any positive energy that may have come to your mind doing these meditations to all those people of your life, by extension, all sentient beings. Strong wish for His Holiness to live long, for, them to find Lama Zopa Rinpoche, healthy, happy, and I guess fairly soon, but maybe, I don't know, not too soon, be with his mum for a little bit. And then your own personal individual teachers. Okay, everyone, lots of love. Thank you so much.